The second episode of this show was drastically different from the first, the beauty of an anthology. The episode Graveyard Rats was set a few centuries ago in Massachusetts as a gravedigger Mr. Masson was in debt, just like Nick from the first episode, and he was robbing graves in order to pay back what he owed. However, what lied beneath the ground was far different to anything he could imagine, as he himself became the holder of the product that he was once searching for. So with that, I thought I'd recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this episode. So let's get into it. Here is Cabinet of Curiosities Episode 2, Graveyard Rats Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The episode started off with us hearing about the differences of what lies beneath the ground and all that it can provide. For vermin that chew on wood and bone, nourishment. For humankind, bounty. This immediately showed the two different approaches and viewpoints we were going to see in the episode and that were being faced with Mr. Masson right at the end, with the rat on one side and the person on his other. For the rats that were ever so present throughout the entirety of the episode and were being seen to take the treasure that Mr. Masson was constantly seeking, they require what's underground in order to survive. It's a side of life that we don't see, nor do we need. Whereas Mr. Masson was representing humankind in finding the bounty within the ground and the form of payment that he was so desperately desiring in order to pass on. We witnessed Mr. Masson at the start of the episode stop two people from stealing from a grave, and in turn, once they ran off, he himself revealed himself as a gravedigger and took what belonged to the individual beneath the ground. This was only the beginning of hearing about the type of person that he was, with most of it being worthless due to him believing the rats were stealing the valuables from the bodies. We heard that the person he owed his debt to was prepared to give him 1 week in order to pay what he needed to. Following this, we saw the deal that Mr. Masson had with the individual down at the morgue, where he allowed him to rob the individuals whilst they were laying there, or he hired him as a gravedigger so he knew where he could later go to in order to retrieve the goods. This was where we saw some kind of rat-like behavior being exhibited by the person working there, licking his lips, locking his eyes, and willing to do something in order for a reward, showing the similarities between the two species. This was where the second half of the episode got its tonal setup. A deceased wealthy individual who had a mouthful of golden teeth, but more specifically a saber in which was gifted to him by King George. Mr. Masson hoped to pay off his debts with the retrieval of these prized items. From this moment on, the episode took a drastic turn. The realistic setup of the episode took a step to the side. We hadn't seen any supernatural occurrences in the first 15 minutes of the runtime. However, once Mr. Masson returned to his room, we saw something extremely strange occur. A rat's tail came poking through the ceiling, and an influx of rats then started to pour on top of him in a continual flow, almost like the ceiling of a coffin breaking through. One thing that I thought was similar to this scene with the tail coming through the ceiling was the final nail in the coffin that Mr. Masson imagined the person he owed his debts to hammering in. So from this moment, it does make me wonder if everything we went on to see at the point from Mr. Masson waking up is him dead or either inside of his mind, with the change that was extremely different to the tone at the start, and the wooden coffin that we saw him find his way into at the end of the episode being bare, like the one that we saw him get put in. It makes me question if anything that we see beyond him lying in his bed is real or not. That's one thought that crossed my mind at least anyway, and why I feel we had the image of him being locked in a coffin partway through. He said that his employer was going to give him a week, but there was nothing to say that the impatience that was present ran out, and they came at him during the night. That's one theory at least. When Mr. Masson went to dig up the wealthy individual, we saw that the rats had been at it and had taken all of the valuables and proceeded to take the body into the underground tunnels. We saw a claustrophobic Mr. Masson commit to going beneath the ground, exhibiting rat-like behaviors in going after the body and crawling in the very space where rats navigate, showing that he's just like the very thing that he despises. Greed is a motivator for him, but also a necessity in order to pay his debts back. We witnessed him plunge himself deeper and deeper beneath the ground in order to find the treasure and follow the rat, until a swarm of them came in and he ended up killing one, leading him to witness the menacing queen feeding the smaller ones. Whilst trying to take out the queen after it was in close proximity to him, we saw him evade and fall into what could only be described as the Black Church. All of the skeletons from the bodies that the rats took were down there, along with all of the treasure that he claimed had been taken by them. Mr. Masson even uttered the Black Church when he laid eyes upon it. The Black Church was referenced earlier on in the episode when he spoke of tales of the olden days, where people carried out sacraments towards unspeakable entities. One of these was the statue that was underground and the ornament we saw at the start of the episode. Mr. Masson saw rings, treasure, the saber he was looking to steal from the coffin, and also a necklace that drew his attention immediately. Again, something we saw at the start. This led the skeleton-like zombie to awaken and go after him, uttering mine, mine, mine over and over again as it got closer to him. This is what also leads me to believe that this could be inside of his head or after he had died, because the passages underground where people would worship entities was something that was not believed by all. And with the undead becoming alive, it makes me think that this was something that would only occur inside of his mind. As he escaped, Masson was faced with the queen rat on one side and the zombie on the other, showing the rats he is stealing from and also the individuals that he's stealing from to feed his greed. He managed to destroy the queen rat, and afterwards he saw a light up a tunnel shining. As he followed the light, we saw him get to the top and realized that it was his torch that was reflecting upon the symbol that had rest in peace on it, rather than the freedom that he had hoped for. This to me makes me think that he was dead as all of this was happening. This was a coffin for him. We then saw the rats storm in and the claustrophobic, musophobic individual plunged into darkness, until right at the end we saw the very gravediggers that he saw at the start dig open his grave and see him with all of the treasure that he spent the entirety of his time trying to retrieve. I thought this was a really good episode. It was a thought-provoking one, and I think there are multiple different things you can take away from it. The uncomfortable screeches from both the zombie and the rats were unbearable to listen to, and you could really feel the tightness of the space with the shots that were chosen. Whilst Masson may be dead, this could have been happening in his head or in real time, which would mean that the cultist following that burrow beneath Salem, Massachusetts, where the undead thrive, could be a thing. That's down for us to decide. But one thing for sure is that Masson's greed got the better of him, and he shared a commonality with the rats. He relied on these bodies and their treasures to survive. I would say that I preferred the first episode to the second, but I did prefer the tone of this episode. I'm most certainly looking forward to what's still to come over the following few episodes. I'll be covering all of the episodes in the anthology, so be sure to stick around or head over to the playlist. So, there you have it. Cabinet of Curiosities Episode 2, Graveyard Rats, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.